Hello? Hey? Mina? We are talking House of Darkness. This one is written and directed by Neil LaBute and stars Justin Long, who you may know from Jeepers Creepers, and Kate Bosworth, and a couple of other actors as well. Now, this was a hard movie to try and review. It's actually about the third or the fourth time I've recorded this review, because I don't know how much to reveal. It's a very, very simple plot, and it has this kind of reveal in it that the movie kind of plays like it's having its twist, but it's so obvious that even the movie itself kind of gives it away. It's kind of poster, it's marketing material, just kind of things that happen in the movie, names of characters. I'm thinking, does this movie think that people don't know what's going on? And there's a certain word, and I'm just going to say it, so there it is. This is a vampire movie, and everything in this movie will point to that, but the kind of the movie plays like it has this reveal that, oh my god, characters are actually vampires. I was like, do I even mention that? But it's kind of like, it's so obvious that you kind of thinking that's meant to be a reveal. Anyway, let's talk about the movie. So it's a lower budget film, clearly, that uses budget somewhat differently, I would say, to some other low budget films. It's a purely dialogue driven movie for 95% of the film. So Justin Long plays a character called Hap, who is, as we learn through the movie, somewhat of a womanizer. And he has met this woman, played by Kate Bosworth, called Mina. That name may strike a familiar tone with vampire fans. And we see them kind of, at the beginning of the movie, pull up to her residence. And it's this kind of Gothic kind of looking castle type of structure in the middle of nowhere. And she's all kind of dressed up in somewhat a Gothic attire. And immediately you're thinking vampire, straight away. And essentially the movie is the character of Mina and Hap, played by Justin Long, going into this large kind of Gothic castle type house and talking. And they're joined by a couple of other characters, one of which is called Lucy. Lucy and Mina, there you go. They should again sound familiar to some of you. And essentially it's the assassination of Justin Long's character. That's kind of what the movie is. It's basically this guy who's somewhat of a womanizer, somewhat of a player, meeting this woman, or there might be other characters as well, and having his kind of story, his character kind of picked apart, and his lies kind of exposed by a bunch of women who may well have a supernatural element to them. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what I think works in this movie. So as I mentioned, I do believe this is somewhat of a lower budget movie, but what they've done is they spent the money on having higher profile talent. So you have Justin Long and Kate Bosworth, who are somewhat kind of like well-known actors and have a wealth of experience behind them, and as such the quality of the acting here I think is higher than a lot of kind of like lower budget films that you would have seen, because you have essentially veteran actors here doing some fairly good work. In particular, I would say the female cast here do very good work, especially Kate Bosworth, whose character is both kind of playful and flirtatious, but you can tell that there's other motivations there. There's things here going on behind her eyes that are a little bit more sinister, and I think she plays it fantastically. And there are other female characters that are introduced as well, who I think do an equally good job, although they have a little less screen time. Similarly, Justin Long's character I do have some problems with, but I think it's more to do with writing than the performance. But I think his character is a flawed protagonist. He's obviously somewhat of a kind of a player, a womanizer, if you like. So he has these kind of, what might be considered character flaws, but he still is played as a kind of our point of view character. And the movie kind of wants us to kind of essentially root for him. They do an interesting thing here that even though he's somewhat of a kind of a player, I wouldn't say they make him particularly like sexually aggressive. For example, at the beginning of the movie, where we see him drive up to the kind of this house, Mina's house, you know, he's not pressing his luck too much. He's kind of like, so well, I'll just drop you off here then. And she invites him in, so he's not pressuring her into kind of like sleeping with him or whatever. So his character is somewhat of a player or a playboy, but you feel he is still somewhat kind of like being, you know, fairly kind of like, I think, not too bad with it, if that makes sense. You know, it's revealed that he may or may not be married, but, you know, his character, I think, is somewhat more of a complex character, because he has varying degrees of morality, shall we say. And I'm going to touch on some other bits as we kind of go through the review. I do have some problems with his character that we'll come on to, but I think Justin Long does the best as he can with that. Next, I do think that this movie benefits from some fantastic location shooting. You know, we have this kind of like this Gothic looking building that is Mina's home, and you know, it's kind of like somewhat of a castle kind of looking structure. So we get some great, you know, nice exterior shots. There's a shot we see there on a balcony. But even the interiors here, they're filmed to be a really kind of like quite spooky looking place, and they do some great things with lighting as well in this movie. The lighting plays a good role in kind of building up a somewhat of a darker and spooky atmosphere that I think helps this movie not overtly have these horror vibes, but you certainly get this kind of like this more unsettling feeling, and you know something's not quite right because I think the lighting is done kind of quite, you know, so well. Now the movie is a 95% dialogue driven. We get more of an overt kind of horror element towards the end of the movie, but it's 95% just dialogue. Now I have some issues with the dialogue because I do think it kind of, well, we'll talk about it in a minute, but what I would say the positive side here, even though this movie is essentially a character piece, just with, you know, just two people or sometimes more than two people sitting in a room talking, the dialogue here for the most part is quite well written, with some interesting exchanges and you know, character moments. There's a great bit, for example, where you have some characters telling each other ghost stories. I think it's very effective, and just kind of things here that, you know, characters will say something and then another character will pick up on what they said and then kind of question them about it. So there are some elements of the dialogue that I did like. And then we get to the kind of the horror elements, which is, considering there's not much of has happened in the entire movie, we get to this somewhat of a more of an overt horror element, and because the movie has been so serene until then, it kind of, I think, is quite kind of effective. Okay, so let's talk about what I think does not work in this movie. So this movie doesn't really have much in the way of plot. Let me just say that. It's really, as I said, a 95% dialogue driven movie, but the dialogue sort of content is more or less all of the same. It's the assassination of Justin Long's character and his kind of like tearing down the kind of the facade that he's put up of this kind of like this womanizer sort of character, so to speak. And it's our female characters basically kind of getting him to trip up over himself and kind of getting himself caught in a lie and having to try and, you know, create more lies and stuff. But that's kind of all it is. It's all it is, like 95% of this movie's runtime. And I think the movie needed to have a little bit more going on in regards to what's actually kind of, even kind of the dialogue. I think it could have strayed into other areas, because I just felt like the whole movie is just kind of like that one kind of subject stretched over the kind of this feature-length runtime. The other thing I would say that kind of goes hand in hand with that, I've mentioned that I kind of like the acting, but I think Justin Long's character, his character is written not as strongly as the others. So the character that Justin Long plays, called Hap, seems completely clueless. He seems like a complete idiot and is constantly kind of like flip-flopping about what he's saying, and he just seems to be a little bit of a joke, to be honest. Now I know the movie's trying to steer us in that direction, but I think the movie goes too far in making him seem like such a moron. Is like, how would any kind of woman be fooled by this guy, what he's kind of saying and things like that? Because he was, even without kind of Kate Bosworth and the other female characters pushing him to kind of trip himself up, he would just leave him to it and he does it himself. You know, he just kind of seems like such a kind of like an idiot in regards to his kind of character, it actually makes him somewhat cartoonish. But I have to say as well, some of the things that the movie kind of shows us feel really unnecessary in regards to, are we meant to, you know, why is he doing this? For example, we never see the character of Hap at this club where he meets the Kate Bosworth character. But while she's kind of out of the room at one point, he phones a friend that he was out with. So he was out obviously with one of his friends, and he's kind of giving him an update on what's kind of going on. And then Kate Bosworth's character questions him about it a little later, and he lies about it. And I think, well, why would you lie? It just doesn't make any sense. It's like, what crime is it that you've been out with your friend? I mean, surely it's a little weirder if you've been out on you're just in a bar on your own, surely. And he's kind of like, he gets in a fluster and kind of makes all this crap up, and it ends up kind of being caught in this lie about something where I don't really feel he had even reason to lie about it. And then it's kind of like Kate Bosworth's character questions whether he's married, and again he's sort of flip-flopping on what to say, and I'm thinking, well, surely if you're this kind of womanizer, surely you've kind of got this kind of answer put down, you know. You either say, yes I am, but we're separated, or you just go, no I'm not, and just stay there. I felt his character was somewhat kind of poorly written, if I'm honest, and he just seems so idiotic at times. As I said, he kind of feels like he's kind of a cartoon. And then, because this as I say, really more or less nearly all a dialogue-driven movie, I would have liked to have seen more paths gone down in regards to the subject matter, because it kind of all is the same. It's just, it's all of just kind of like making this character of Hap seem like an idiot. But you know, we get a couple of like moments where we think it's going to go in a different direction. They talk about the female's father, and if you, I don't need to probably point out who that is. If their girls are called MANIA and Lucy, it should be relatively obvious what they're talking about there. But it's cut short, and I think, you know, would have been nice to have a little bit more variety in the kind of the conversation. If we're not going to have anything else other than kind of conversation in this movie, have a little bit more going on, rather than just a kind of the constant kind of like one thing that this movie kind of has on that never really kind of goes anywhere else. And anytime it threatens to, it's kind of quickly brought back into, oh, Hap, you know, what did you say about this? And don't you mean this? And things like that. It's just like, man, I'm kind of wanting something a little bit else to be going on here. The dialogue, I think, is good at times. Although sometimes, as I said, it feels unnecessary, but I just felt they needed to have other subjects to talk to. A dialogue-driven movie is good at times, but I think you have to have you know, an interesting subject. This one just feels a little bit stretched out, and that is the other issue as well. It's when you watch this movie, it ends exactly how you think it's going to end. There's no real kind of like clever kind of twist. It ends literally exactly how you think it's going to end. I was kind of sitting here thinking, so this is kind of like a dialogue-driven movie where we're pretty sure that kind of like the characters in this movie are going to be vampires. You know, where do we go? It literally goes exactly where I thought it was going to go, and I was like, oh, for some reason I thought this movie might try and kind of do something a little cleverer. No, it doesn't. So overall, it's certainly a well-made movie for what it is. You know, a dialogue-driven movie with kind of people in conversation with good actors. Some of the writing is good, some of it I don't think is as good, and you know, with a small amount of effective horror. But ultimately, it's exactly what you think it's going to be. It isn't kind of all that interesting, although I think it still is enough to kind of get you engaged. But it could have been more. I think this movie could have been more. So I would say this movie's a 5 out of 10. It's certainly not a bad film, and I was interested in kind of, you know, where it was going to go. But I kind of thought it was going to try and surprise us, but ultimately it doesn't. So it feels like somewhat of a redundant film, because it's kind of like not a lot happens, and what does happen is exactly what you think is going to happen. But it's well made for what it is. You know, it is well shot, well edited, well lit, well acted, but ultimately not all that surprising. 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.